Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another edition of Vantage Point on ITV. I'm your host, Mohammed Choonara. Thank you for joining us. In the last few months, or even the last few years, we've seen Turkey playing a very important role in the world community. Turkey, with its President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has been a bastion of hope for many people in the Islamic world. We've seen the help that Turkey has given the refugees in Syria, and now recently we've seen the help that Turkey has given the Rohingya refugees as well. And this is not the first time we're discussing Turkey on the show. I think it's important that we see what's happening in other countries in the world, also in consideration to South Africa. So this evening I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Kani Torun, a former ambassador to Somalia, and he's also the deputy chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, a Turkish MP. Dr. Torun, assalamu alaikum, welcome to ITV.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Torun, as I mentioned in my introduction, we see Turkey has started to play a very important role, but we know the role that Turkey has played for hundreds of years, even if you take it back to the Ottoman Empire and then coming back down. But now recently we see Turkey playing a very important role in the international community.
Yeah, it's about 15 years since the AK Party came to power, our party, ruling party. So Turkey has been a stable economy and then very stable growth, and then increased investment, and economy become better, and also the Turkey they changed the direction, not just the relationship with the Europe and the West, also started to have a good relationship with the region, with our traditional this historical base, this Muslim world. So that's the reason, it's all comes to one, and then Turkey become more visible.
You mentioned stability. Turkey has been a very stable country for the last 15 years or so. Last year we saw the very unfortunate incident of the coup that almost took place in Turkey. We remember the tanks on the bridges. We remember Ataturk Airport being surrounded. What difference has the coup made, and what damage has the attempted coup done to the people of Turkey?
First of all, I would like to explain who did this. This is a small minority. It's around 1 to 2%. But they are, this is a cult-like organization, but they infiltrated in powerful government institutions like army, judiciary, police, and intelligence. So that's the reason they want to do, to apply their agenda. Their agenda is not for Turkish people and in general for Turkey. It's for foreign agenda. So, but that's the reason all parts of society, left to right, not just ruling party, also 3 opposition parties, all opposed the coup. So that is the reason that people stopped that coup d'etat.
We noticed on television, sitting here in the southern tip of Africa, watching those visuals on TV, and you notice that the people of Turkey, the general citizens of the country, stood up against the people trying to pull off a coup in the country. How important was that moment in the history of Turkey?
It's very important because it was at the time that is Turkey, actually, the people took their fate on their hands. If you look at what's happening in the Middle East since 2011, since the Arab uprising started, first, Arab uprising, this give big hope for the people in the Middle East, but gives also the some powers in the West, particularly Israel, frightened about this Arab uprising because the people, when they took the power, they cannot manipulate easily. So then they started to overturn these governments. You know, in Yemen, in Libya, then Egypt coup, and then Syria. You know, they become a bloodbath. So it's a process. That process, they also tried to stop Turkey. It is this part of this agenda. What happened in Egypt, same thing happened in Turkey, but they couldn't, they were not successful. Then what happened in the Middle East at the moment, it's the same agenda. You know, this agenda is divide and rule agenda, and then Muslims fighting each other, and who will get benefit in the Middle East? If you look at the map, that only Israel will get benefit, because when Muslims fight each other, and then more divisions, then Israel will get free hand to do everything in Palestine.
Speaking about Israel, what is Turkey's current relationship with the State of Israel? We know from a moral point of view, and we know also from an Islamic point of view, the Israelis, and we at the time of the Balfour Declaration, the 100-year anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, the Palestinians were displaced from their land. We see how the conditions Palestinians are living in, and unfortunately the people of Gaza are still under a blockade partly by Egypt as well, which is a really sad state of affairs if you look at it in the bigger picture. But what is Turkey's relationship with Israel as we speak?
You know, after the Mavi Marmara incident 2010, Turkey actually stopped all the relationship. However, that we gave 3 conditions, and then at the end they met the conditions. And after this happened, then we sent our ambassador to Israel. But what I can say, it's not very warm. Just, you know, the normal relationship. And also Turkey used this relationship to help Muslims in Palestine, particularly Gaza. You know, that because of the agreement, Turkey only can send, goods to Gaza through Israel. So that's the reason we use this to help our brothers in Gaza.
There's a lot of propaganda being spewed by certain factions saying that Turkey and Israel have very close trade agreements, etc. But I think you've covered the topic. The reason why Turkey is back in Israel is also mainly because we do know if anything needs to go into Gaza, it has to go through Israel.
You know, first of all, that is a wrong assumption. If the coup were successful, that Turkey and Israel would be very, very close link, because the group tried to, organize that coup d'etat. That group, actually, pro-Israeli group in Turkey, they always sided with Israel when this Turkey and Israel fall out in some issues like Mavi Marmara issue, like Gaza bombing. They always blamed victims, Palestinians, and victims in Mavi Marmara flotilla instead Israel. So they always in the side of Israel, and then if the coup were successful, the relationship would be better. Now the relationship is not warm, but just the relationship, because we need to keep this relationship to send something to Gaza.
No, I agree with you 100% there. Moving on now to the rest of the Middle East, we see Turkey being a very stable country in the Middle East, with the exception of the attempted coup last year. But you see a Turkish economy that's booming. You see Turkish products and Turkish people moving all around the world with their businesses. In South Africa, for example, you see Turkish markets. We see a lot of Turkish businesses coming into the country. Is that one of the reasons why certain people would like to destabilize Turkey, to collapse the economy, and thus using IMF loans, etc., to get involved in Turkey?
Yeah, first of all, that Turkey's position is not different than other countries in the Middle East. You know, they want to destabilize whole Middle East, and they were successful in the other countries. You know, Iraq, Syria, now. Lebanon and Saudi Arabia against Qatar, etc., etc. So they were all successful. But Turkey, we are neutral in those issues, and also we are despite the 3 million refugees we are now hosting in Turkey, the economy is still growing, and for that reason that Turkish business go out everywhere to increase this economic activity. Unfortunately, this situation in the Middle East affected us also economically, because the Middle East is the biggest and then immediate market, but we cannot use now. But Africa, in many parts of Africa, Turkish business working in Africa, and with a different ethic, we say that win-win, not just one side win, both sides will win, good partnerships. So that's the reason, Turkish business also is booming in Africa and some other regions.
Dr. Turan, we need to take a short break now. I think when we come back, we can discuss the Arab conflicts at the moment that's happening, especially when it comes to Yemen, Saudi Arabia, the current situation in Saudi Arabia, where we see a lot of princes being arrested. And we can also speak about South Africa-Turkey relations, which seems to be on the increase, and maybe some of your experiences working as the first ambassador in Somalia. We're going to take a short break now. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Vantage Point. I'm still in the studio by Dr. Kani Turan, an MP from Turkey, and we're just discussing the current situation in Turkey as well as the Middle East. And in this segment of the show, we'll also discuss some of the South African-Turkey relations. Dr. Turan, welcome back to Vantage Point.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Turan, before the break, we discussed the failed coup in Turkey and the plot to destabilize the country. Moving forward now, we see the current situation in the Middle East. Syria, as you mentioned previously, is a bloodbath. You look at Yemen, which is a very sad state of affairs as well. Then you look at Saudi Arabia, where we're having multiple arrests of princes and ministers on corruption charges. Then we look at the Iran-Saudi Arabia issue, we look at the Qatar issue. So the Middle East at the moment, as we look at it, seems to be very unstable, and things seem to be on a knife edge.
Yeah, it's not good actually. It's not good for the Muslims in the Middle East. What you see, in the Middle East at the moment, Saudi Arabia, many princes arrested, and then situation actually is very critical. This is actually basically, there is the hands of Trump administration there, as his son-in-law just 1 week ago there, and then they give some instructions. And this way of dealing in the Middle East did not bring any good so far, and then I don't think it will bring to Saudi Arabia from now. And also the UAE, that bloc against Qatar. So the main issue is that they are actually they are against the peaceful Islamic movement. This is at the moment the West working and Israel working with these kind of governments. So they are very much afraid of peaceful Muslims, because when they terrorize Muslims, it's easily to eliminate them. Like if they use terrorism, like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, etc., that is easily, you can terrorize them, you can kill them, and you can justify your actions. But peaceful Muslims, peaceful Islamic movements like Ikhwan, they are frightful because they cannot terrorize them. They do not use violence, so they don't like them. So these countries actually they are afraid of people's power. They are afraid of peaceful Islamic movements. So this is not the way they can be successful. I'm sure at the end of the day people will get the power in their hands. So that the movement, like this in Egypt, what happened in Yemen, what happened, all these issues, you cannot separate what happened in Turkey. The whole destabilization in the Middle East, as I said before, only benefited Israel and will benefit Israel.
We know the role America, the United States, the cushy relationship they have with Israel. What hand has the new Trump administration played in this new destabilization of the Middle East? When I come specifically to Yemen, to Qatar, which have seen a blockade, we also see a problem where Iran has been thrown into this proxy war, basically. Yeah. What role has the United States played in this matter?
They are putting pressure now on the Palestinians to accept a new deal, which is basically they will take all the land. Israel will take nearly all the land. So, and these some Arab countries, namely Saudis and the UAE, helping Americans to do this. So this is a sad story, actually. At the end of the day, unfortunately, they are using their power against the Palestinians. But in the face they don't say this, but behind they do this, and still now they are pushing. Americans pushing this agenda, a new deal for Palestinians. So it's basically what is give Israel a free hand.
Dr. Torun, the Muslim population in the Middle East runs into the multi-million people. Wouldn't it be wise for a group of people to get together, a group of leaders to sit together and get a united Middle East and a united Muslim population to stand up against so many injustices that are being committed against Muslims all over the world?
If the governments represent people, that would possible. Which would be happen, if the Egypt, the continuous democratic process, and with Turkey, with some other countries. But at the moment, they are not the people's voice. There's no democracy, and all of them, they are serving whoever give them that power.
We saw after the Arab Spring, where we thought democracy will come into many Arab countries. We look at Libya, which is a failed state as we speak. We look at Egypt, where it's a military dictatorship. We look at Syria, where the war is still going on. How important is it for these citizens in this country to realize the importance of democracy? When you look at Turkey, we've had free, fair elections in the last few years. We look at certain other countries in the region where there have been elections and things have moved. But how important is it for citizens in the countries to realize the importance of democracy?
Actually, it's not the realization. I'm sure the people realize all those things. The issue is that when they realize, when they actually ask their rights, they get bombed. So that is the issue. So the West, actually, they are very hypocrite. They don't like any peaceful movement in the Middle East, any democracy in the Middle East. But they always support the dictators and then monarchs.
Why is the West so intent on having a destabilized Middle East? It is the fear of Islam being this religion, the religion we knew where during the Ottoman Empire, during the times of the Caliphate, where Islam was the religion ruling so much of the world. Is it a fear that the West have?
Always there is a fear, of course. This is the crusade mentality. Always the Muslims are others, and then they have always fear of Muslims. However, they have ethics only for themselves. They have no ethics in foreign policy, and for power, for oil, for natural resources, they always support dictators. But on the other hand, they always champion of democracy. So this is their hypocrisy.
So it's basically a lose-lose situation for the people of the Middle East. A normal citizen who lives there, they stand to lose everything because they've got the West upping dictatorships because of the natural resources. Moving on now, let's speak about South Africa-Turkey relations. As I've mentioned previously, we see a very big Turkish community in South Africa. We see Turkish businesses thriving. What is South Africa and Turkey relationships looking like going forward?
It's very important because South Africa is a power base for Africa, as like Turkey is in the Middle East. So it's very important countries. This deal each other in the regional relationship. And also we have a long history in South Africa. You know, the late 19th century, you know, Ottoman sultans sent Abu Bakr Effendi to Cape Town. You know, they started relationship. Even Ottomans had the consul general here. So many things in his history is you know, historically we have a relationship, and also it is quite sizable and very powerful Muslim population. So we also have relationship with the Muslim population, but also in general, of course, you know, Turkish and South African relationship should be better than this. I'm sure it will be. There is only one problem, brother. The problem is that this group of people, you know, who you know, just perpetrated those you know, coup d'etat and they killed people. Most of them, they are positioned themselves in US and some in Europe, but also they are in South Africa. They have schools here and they are still operating. This is kind of poisonous things that can poison the relationships. So particularly my advice to Muslims in South Africa to be aware of this problem, because these people, they used our own kids against us. They brainwashed them and then they killed our own you know, this unarmed civilians. So they can do anything. You know, they brainwash your kids and then they can use your kids against yourself. Be aware of this, and then if you send your children, be careful, and then best way to send other schools. This is my advice to Muslims here. But also we need to increase our relationship, government to government, parliament to parliament, NGO to NGO, so, and business to business. So all these parts, you know, now we are representing, you know, we met with Musiat and some, you know, this business people here. We have a reception tonight with the business people. We are doing some NGO work here. We will increase our NGO work with the local NGOs. Also, we met some, you know, parliament members. We want to increase the interparliamentarian relationship, and we'll encourage our governments, so both sides, to increase the relationship, because both governments have, you know, G20 member. Both governments has a very crucial role in their regions. So I think in the long term, we could be a very good partners.
Dr. Choonara, we've run out of time. I wanted to ask you one more question, and I think I can squeeze it in. Is the Turkish government concerned about the current battles in the ruling ANC in South Africa? You do know we're having an elective conference in December where a new leader will be chosen. Are you or the Turkish government concerned about the route South Africa will take going forward, or will the relationship stay the same?
You know, our policy particularly in Africa, what we are doing. I have been to Somalia before. I worked for the Turkish government in Somalia 3 years. So our policy never, you know, this, you know, go into the local politics. You know, we respect the people's, you know, opinions, whatever they elect, whoever they elect. So we work with them. So. You know, this is up to the ANC members, up to South Africans, whoever they choose, they will be our friend, and we will work with them.
Dr. Choonara, thank you so much. Really important and really interesting conversation we had with Dr. Kani Turan, an MP from Turkey. And I think very importantly, he ended off saying that Turkey respects the rights of the countries that they work in, and they leave the local politics to the locals. On that note, it's time for us to say goodbye. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.